we're coming to the end of our series, Aspects of Love. This is going to be the last in at least this particular series for the time being, and it's probably appropriate to choose the quality or the aspect of love that you've described in your book here, Unconditional Love Is, Appreciating Aspects of Life, calling it New Beginnings. So we're going to be talking about presumably how unconditional love enables new beginnings in some way, and it does seem that this is a time for all of us when new beginnings are on the horizon in so many different ways. So I think this should be a particularly fascinating one to look at today, and what I'll do is to read the page that you've written about new beginnings and see what we can pick up out of it. Every moment of every day is a new beginning. This is the eternal truth of our being. We have the opportunity to change and evolve beyond our current limiting beliefs through the power of our thoughts and feelings. By the mere shift in our attention and attitude, we begin anew and create according to our fresh direction and focus. If we wish to know who we have been, we can look upon our physical reality now, since it reflects our past perspectives. If we want to know who we are becoming, we need to be aware of our thoughts and feelings right now. This moment is the key to all realities, past, present and future, as it holds the only opportunity to ever consciously make a change. Unconditional love is new beginnings. Through the power of self-love, we find the seed of possibility and a new beginning. So this again is talking about living in the present moment, is it, and the power of the present moment.
Very much so, and in this sense, again, as a quality, not one you would typically attribute to unconditional love,
No.
and yet looking at a broader perspective, as we've shared before, this is the moment where we are physically, emotionally, mentally, and as we've said, generally termed spiritually, whole aspect of us all together at once.
Mm-hmm.
This is the moment where we can actually choose to change our thoughts. We can choose to feel differently about life. We can take physical action. We can't do that in the past, and we can't do that in the future. We can only change our perspectives right here and right now. And I came across that understanding so early on, and when I cultivated this phrase, every moment of every day is a new beginning, it was such a stunning revelation in my own world, because in that phrase alone, we place ourselves in somewhat of the linear fashion in the way we journey through life as, past, present, future, because we tend to be thinking, past and future and rarely living in the present. But there's kind of a, A begets B, B begets C, kind of a linear aspect. In that understanding, we have a tendency to live very habitually, very routinely. We have a tendency to follow structures, rituals, suggestions, conditions, traditions. We live often by the standards of everyone and everything around us, and very rarely live by our own heart. I certainly was one of those. I was one of those that was highly conditioned to follow a life path, a career path. Then certainly I was able to manifest those things, and yet to my own benefit, I realized early on that something was amiss. I realized that I was doing everything right, and yet I wasn't happy within. And that contrast, gave me the opportunity to say, well, I can either continue this way and continue to amplify the unhappiness and continue to beat to everybody else's drum, or I can stop and actually take time for myself to understand who I am in the big scheme of life. And that shift from going from an outward way of living to an inward understanding really changed my life in profound ways that has absolutely given me a completely different life stream a couple of decades later than the previous original couple of decades. one could almost say it feels like a completely different lifetime, because I'm doing things so extraordinarily different than the track that I was on, and it's more or less obvious conclusion. Unhappiness just being, the experience throughout, but the actual physical manifestations were pretty obvious. I mean, they were going to be kind of, it was a singular track heading to a destination that was, like everyone else's seemingly. So obviously it did take a certain amount of inner strength and inner courage to say, I'm going to look and I'm going to take action differently. And what came out of that was a recognition that it didn't matter who I'd been. What mattered is who I am, or who I perceive I am in this moment, and who can I become. And in that sense, I really kind of shifted my focus more from a standpoint of, this is who I've been, therefore this is who I will be, to a focus of, who do I want to be? Therefore that will become who I am and who I've been. So I went and kind of shifted in almost 180 the idea that I could start to look at life and begin to express myself by choice in a way that, what would I like to become? What sings to my heart? What brings me joy? What nourishes me on all levels, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually? What gives me the sense of well-being that certainly wasn't being found in my past or my present at the time? And the exploration of all this unlimited potential was, at once scary and extremely intriguing at the same time. Scary in the sense that I was having to set aside who I'd been, and intriguing by that unknown potential that simply just didn't know. I didn't know what it could become. I had no idea at the time, when I made this rather profound transformation in my life, that I would ever write books or, lead up to running the Love Foundation as an international nonprofit, sitting here talking with you about the things that I've learned and understood. Those were not in my journey on the old track. Mm-hmm. So New Beginnings was a recognition in its early infancy stages of the unconditional love as a natural part of my being. Because certainly under the old ways, my externalization didn't recognize love. It had nothing to do with, love, much less unconditional love. And this transformation not only opened me up to my own potential, it opened me up to the better understanding of unconditional love at the core of my being as something that I could learn to embody in greater and greater ways. One of the qualities we've talked about already that fits with this is forgiveness. One of the ways that we make this transformation, that this transition, is to literally forgive the past in this present moment. In other words, the new beginnings at some point that we were unconscious of that caused us to become who we were, who we think we were, and who we are at that transition moment, those were just steps on the path. To fully forgive them, let them go, even if we were following tradition, ritual, suggestion, whatever we were doing, to reclaim ourselves, to reclaim the love within ourselves, the self-acceptance, and the potential that we have individually, unique unto ourselves. Forgiveness is a great way to detach, let go, and reestablish in this present moment our fuller potential of who we are and who we can become. In a way, that's a new dawn, a new day, a new beginning. And in those early stages, that new beginning was much more, it was much more related to a sense of time, in the sense that, big blocks of time, like who I had been over my lifetime, was now being a new beginning of who I can become over a lifetime. Certainly over the years and the months and the moments, I have come to better understand and embody that in every moment. So now I understand that it doesn't matter who I was just a moment before, a second before, and 10 minutes before. It's no longer about who I'd been my entire lifetime. I can change readily from one moment to the next. Mm-hmm. I can choose to think differently from one moment to the next, because I've understood and embodied the sense that every moment of every day is a new beginning. It's no longer about once in a lifetime. It's no longer about once in a year, no longer about once in a day. It's literally, if I realize that I choose to look at life differently from one moment to the next, I give myself that opportunity. It's not even permission at that point. I simply allow myself to express in a new and unique way. And I let go of however I thought I saw myself moments before. That's an incredibly, truly incredibly powerful understanding, because then we can use this as an understanding in our quest to embody greater and greater love in a very practical way, because throughout our day, we may not remember love, but we can remember new beginnings. We can remember that it doesn't matter what I just said, what I just did. I can do something differently. The power of the moment, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all one. It's only in this moment that we can change anything. So the more we can remember to be present in the moment, and a new beginning is really a very easy way to say, oh, wow, I just did that. I just said that. I just felt that. This is a new beginning. I can choose differently. So it restores us back to that personal power, that personal responsibility, that I can choose differently. So it doesn't matter how I may react both inwardly and outwardly to something, I can choose differently. Potent, extraordinarily potent understanding with new beginnings.
You're not talking about changing your life at every moment. You're changing direction, changing the whole circumstances of one's life from one
Or
moment
am
to
I?
another.
Or am I?
I don't know, are you?
Certainly in this understanding in new beginnings, one can reinvent themselves literally every moment. In other words, where we may have in the old ways, lived one particular type of career or lifetime or relationship, with this understanding of new beginnings, of when we are more present, we simply reside in greater and greater potential. So, and certainly in my life, not only did my life change in a dramatic way compared to the old way, I would say dramatic isn't probably the best word, but in a very profound way, very differently than I had been living. Subsequently, I keep making all kinds of new choices, and one could say, generically adjustments, to where I keep allowing myself to express myself differently than a moment before. Generally trending, they aren't as, it's not like I'm living here this second and living somewhere else the next second, or I'm doing this second. No, that isn't as, true in the sense that, we won't necessarily make huge life changes all the time. However, all these little adjustments change our life completely. So it's in the smallest of the adjustments, the smallest of the choices, and the smallest of the recognition that we let go of limitation and open up to potential. Every time we do that, we grow, we expand, we love more, we share more, we look at life differently. So where we may not change so many of the physical components immediately to our life, we constantly change our approach to life. And who's to say that under the old ways of looking at things and limitations that, there may have been on that track, on that course of life events, by those rather unconscious choices, say a particular illness that was destined to happen, because based on those choices, we were destined to become that physical dis-ease, that dis-ease with life, and an illness would have, materialized. When we get into this state where we're constantly opening up, is probably the best way to say new beginnings. We're constantly reminding ourselves infinite potentials, infinite solutions. We're not dwelling on what isn't happening or it didn't happen the way we wanted. We're opening up to potentials. That whole understanding can literally change who we become down the road, because things will just simply disappear because we constantly are open. So in that sense, there are physical changes that don't happen. And that's that intangible piece that people don't, there's nothing to, you can't prove that. And yet, if you could understand your life stream based on the way you were, based on the way you are, certainly, as we've mentioned in several instances about my mother, I give the example of how she'd come out being raped, and how she had, held this in for decades, and lots of anger and resentment and all these different things, and to the point where she had cancer, to the point where she eventually announced it, to workshop, to where she eventually did a role play where she forgave everything, and the cancer went away. She changed her reality by choice. A piece that I didn't add to that particular story is in the first year when she was diagnosed, or she was definitely showing, an illness coming on. She'd been misdiagnosed, and I literally watched her die that first year, because the treatment that they were giving her wasn't for was incorrect. It wasn't actually addressing what she actually had because they had misdiagnosed her. And there was a day, I mean, I can remember it distinctly. There was a day where she was probably at one of her weakest points, and she woke up and said, I'm going to do something different. She chose to do a very bold move of going to a very prestigious hospital here in the US, and and found a way to make all that happen. Found the strength, found the courage, but some part of her said, on some level, I choose to live, whatever that means. And then probably within 2 weeks, she had a completely different diagnosis, completely different treatment, and in a sense, she had a brand new beginning. And then here, several years later, after these treatments continued for the actual, correct diagnosis, she had another new beginning in a big life sense, where she actually realized that she needed to tell everybody about this experience that she'd been holding secret. She had another new beginning, and I'm highlighting the big ones, but certainly there were countless small adjustments, choices, decisions that constantly reconnected herself to new beginnings. Profound, extraordinary potential, going on all the time. So if we can step back, one of my favorite things, step back, see that bigger picture. Step out of that immediacy of whatever we think is so dramatic, important, in our face. Step back, take a deep breath, look at the bigger picture, look at the stream and say, I have a choice here. I can choose a new beginning. I may not know where that will take me. I may not know where that will lead me. I can choose to let go of the way it was. I can choose to let go of the way I think it is. I can move forward in new beginnings. That potential resides in every moment. Every moment of every day is a new beginning.
Well, can you relate it specifically to unconditional love then? I mean, presumably it's anybody.
Absolutely. Isn't that the essence of unconditional love? Unconditional, without limitation, without limit, to be unlimited, to live each moment without limitation is to be the expression of an unlimited way of being, to be unconditional love in action. Unconditional love has no limits, limitations. It is always present, always flowing. Unconditional love is unconditional acceptance. Each time we accept what is or what we think was, we release ourselves to a greater unlimited understanding. We allow more love to flow. We allow the love that we have held back, that we withheld, that we blocked, that we created obstacles from, layers upon, limited ourselves from our understanding of love. New beginnings is really, in a way, a metaphor for living life with unconditional love. It's living each moment fully present, fully in love, without condition, without limit. It's gazing upon everyone and everything around us without limit, without condition, without judgment. It's forgiving everything that was without condition, without limit. It's looking at each moment with a fresh new perspective. It is truly the embodiment of unconditional love, because unconditional love has no polarity, has no duality, doesn't see good and bad, right and wrong. It simply is. New beginning is a recognition that this moment simply is, and we can choose to look at life with greater potential and fewer limitations. So in its own quality, in its aspect, again, as we've said with all the other qualities we've discussed, by contemplating for a while this notion of new beginnings in our life, it assists us essentially in recognizing the unconditional love that is already there. So we're fragmenting out this piece that we call new beginnings as a way to practically apply it in our life. And in that practical application, love blossoms. And again, as I said, it was a profound change in my life that I recognized new beginnings as an extraordinary opportunity, which has assisted me over the years in better understanding unconditional love, because of this understanding that unconditional love is new beginnings.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, thanks very much, Harold. And in concluding this series, I really do want to thank you for going into these qualities more deeply. And there are another, I think we've done about 12, haven't we, in this series? There are another 51 in the book, but maybe one day we'll look at some more of them. But really, it's been very enlightening, to go through what we've done.
A pleasure and a joy, and I certainly appreciate, all of your inspired questions and all of the opportunities to elaborate beyond the 3 paragraphs, because yes, there's a lot of awareness that goes into those 3 kind of contemplative paragraphs. And they too are just opportunities for each of us to just remind ourselves just how extraordinary each of us are, and how wonderful life actually is when we come from that space of love. So it has been a true delight to be able to express a little bit more on each of these qualities and share to the audience.
Great. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Alan.